Hello and welcome to everyone. Welcome to Harmoniously podcast. So today we have a very special guest, Logan.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So I'm very excited about this podcast today. So Logan is a dear friend of mine, but he's also a therapist. He's been working with ketamine. So I'm looking forward to know his point of view, his experience, his work. So he's here today with us to share all of this. But we're going to start with a little arriving practice. So I invite you, Logan, as well as everyone listening. If you're not driving a car, obviously, to take a comfortable position and just close your eyes. So we're just going to focus on our breath. Just allow yourself to be arriving to this session, to this podcast, to this time, to the here and now. Just allow yourself to be arriving to the present. And you can slowly also go down from your head to the heart, to the rest of your body, building this connection to the present, to the body, to yourself, to the whole. You can share with your heart your intention for sharing today and Lord listening. And then slowly you can come back to the call and open your eyes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so important to take those moments of pause and to slow things down. We exist in a society, in a culture that moves so quickly, and bringing ourselves back to the present moment, there's so much power in that.
Oh, absolutely. That's true. It is really powerful. We may think, as you said, in our society, like we're always rushing, running, that almost feel like it's a waste of time, but actually it's a gaining of time.
I see coming back to the present moment as a recharge. It's so easy to spend our batteries, in the rush.
Yeah.
So again, I appreciate you taking that time, and you speak of intention, and I wanted to share my intention for visiting with you on the podcast today, and some of what I'm hoping to convey and portray based on my experience and the work that I do. And my hope is to share personal experience as well as some things to consider as people are on their process of healing in their journeys, and just some principles to consider as they're in their own healing process.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. And so before sharing all these beautiful things, I would like for you to introduce yourself. So who is Logan?
I'm Logan. I have been a marriage and family therapist for about 4 years. I own a private practice in southern Utah where I was born and raised. I'm very well located for a lot of wonderful hiking, outdoor exploration. The desert is beautiful, and there's also a lot of mountain regions that are around me and places to visit. So I grew up doing a lot of outdoor activities, being connected to nature, and I love what I do in therapy. It's been just a natural merging of passion and interest, and where my heart feels like it can really be present. So I love being a therapist, and I love holding that container for people to heal and learn about themselves, and integrating psychedelics into the work of therapy and into the work of healing has there's a lot of research that's rolling forward about the possible benefits and the ways that psychedelics can really revolutionize and bring more efficiency to the work of healing and to the work that we're doing in therapy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I remember you also shared with me one time you were also teaching at the university, right?
Yep.
You missed that part.
Yes. So after I completed my master's degree, I had the opportunity to go back to the university that I studied at and completed a year of teaching undergraduate psychology courses, and I
Mhm,
really enjoyed that. I am hoping to do that again soon.
mhm. Yeah, that's wonderful. So that also brings you keeps you closer to studying, researching. Um, but I'm curious to know. So you just mentioned how psychedelic can be this important factor in therapy. But what's your experience with that? Either with your clients or patient, I don't know how you refer to them, and with yourself, if you had any.
Hmm. Yeah, as I was reflecting before the podcast, I feel it would be beneficial.
Sorry.
Microphone was attacking you. I'm just kidding. I feel it would be beneficial to share a little bit of my background working with psychedelics, and also some of my background with mental health challenges that I've faced. So over the course of my life, I've had bouts of intense anxiety, bouts of intense depression, and even as I was completing my master's degree and starting to practice therapy and meet with clients, I was still at that time going through some waves of mental health challenges. And um, there were a lot of Eastern practices that were beginning to fall into my lap when I was early in my conscious healing journey. And I
Mhm,
started practicing a lot of sound healing,
mhm,
meditation, movement practices. And then I was able to start learning about a lot of these medicines that, again, are now kind of coming into mainstream media. Medicines like psilocybin, ayahuasca, tobacco. Tobacco is not psychedelic, but it has so many wonderful healing properties. And so I started
mhm,
learning about plant medicines and psychedelics, and I was able to connect to a dear friend of mine who does some of this work underground, and we got talking and ended up organizing a healing ceremony working with psilocybin. And that experience really opened the door for me to begin exploring and consciously bringing in more medicines to work with that have significantly impacted my own functioning, my ability to heal and work through so many things. Uh, they uh, I say this in the most cliche way. Those medicines really did, on so many levels, save my life and
mm.
brought so much healing.
That's beautiful. Uh, I would like to ask you because these medicine are powerful. At the same time, I mean, you're already a therapist, so you were able to. I mean, did you integrate with the help of someone else, or did you apply
Mm-hmm.
your own tools? Because I'm, I'm sure, but you tell us. But like we know, integration is such an important piece. These
Mm-hmm.
medicines are amazing, but without integration, without this process of bringing that experience into your daily life, then you go back to where you were before. You go back to the old schemes, so nothing changed. But they can be this absolutely powerful tool for absolutely big change. So how was that for you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a wonderful point to bring up. I was working with um, a therapist that I've had a good relationship with for a long time, and that was very beneficial to begin integrating a lot of the experiences that I was having. It's I feel it's so important to have a relationship with some kind of mentor, or a good friend or a therapist, someone who can really help bring the pieces in, that window of opening that we experience in one of those ceremonies or experiences working with one of these medicines. You're absolutely right. There's a bit of an opening that takes place where you can make change, and change becomes easier. But then
Hmm.
it's so easy to go right back into our old patterns. our old environment, and we know that the environment greatly shapes the way that we do things. And so if we keep our environment the same
Mm-hmm.
and go back to those same routines, it's like all that stuff that just then gets opened up, we just pack it right back down, um, and it can feel more like a dream instead of you know a, a big moment of change.
Hmm. That's such an interesting analogy. So yeah, they feel more like a dream instead of this opening, as you said. I love that. There's an opening. There's an opening for you, and it's up to you to take advantage of that, or just to dwell into how beautiful that experience was, and then it becomes like, oh, it's a dream. It was a dream. I mean, it was not a dream, but like it's in the memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how you're approaching that with your own patients.
A lot of that comes down to education. Um, in the Western model of medicine, a lot of the way we approach it is you take this pill, you take this prescription that manages this condition, right? And I've noticed with a lot of my clients, there's education up front that has to be prevented. That I'm instructing and teaching them that these working with these medicines, working with ketamine, it can be prescribed to be a daily prescription, but I've really found more benefit in setting up psychedelic, psycholytic, or ceremonial containers,
Hmm.
and I can explain the difference between all of
Mm-hmm.
those.
Yes.
um, and going back to your question, as I'm preparing clients, it's really about teaching them about that opening. And this isn't just a medicine that you take to, the medicine's not going to create the change. Like, you're the one creating the change with that opening the medicine provides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's not like taking vitamins. That's it.
exactly, exactly. Or taking a prescription that's gonna resolve your depression. Again, in most cases, the medicine can be a powerful teacher for, okay, it can show you some of the things that are creating the depression or creating the anxiety, some of the internal process that's playing out, and it can shine light on those and be like, hey, here's some changes you can make that will help how you feel. So it's kind of like taking a spotlight into yourself
Mm,
and being like, what's going on, and how can I understand this on a deeper level and begin applying change.
yeah. I love that. And it's true. This medicine are showing us this where the root goes, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
how to make changes, and so many other things also.
Yeah, so many other things.
But and that's also, I mean, how do you support your clients navigate the experience and maybe the after experience? Because that's also an element. There's definitely the then taking advantage of this opening to
Mhm.
making the changes, permanent changes. But there's also like the part of like, how do you navigate it, actually all that you're experiencing or that you have experienced. And sometimes it depending on the psychedelic, what happened. So sometimes there's experience that is like there's a chunk of the time just trying to understand what happened, um which is not always depending on the, I would say, at least with ayahuasca, the tradition, how the ceremony is held. But even when the messages are very clear and there is not much doubt about the message, I think I'm no, I just don't only think that by experience there's definitely support needs there's some support needed to really deeply understand the message and what to do with the message. Even if the
Mhm.
message is clear, even if they tell you don't eat bananas, so it's gonna be more clear than that. But there's
Mhm.
still some work to do behind that message. So how do you
Yes.
do that?
Yes. So one thing that I failed to mention this, I spent the last year, um, so 2023, I spent completing a year-long certification to work with ketamine, MDMA, and psilocybin. So I'm
Oh, beautiful.
officially now a psychedelic, therapist,
Yeah.
and it feels wonderful. And in that training, they bring up a lot of what you're talking about. And
Okay.
yeah, so anytime I'm working with a client who chooses to work with ketamine, I have a structure to it, and I make sure we go through three very specific phases when we're working with these medicines. And the first phase is preparation. Where and so much of preparation is really expectation management
Mm.
and helping them. Oh, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Like, preparation just before the session, or is what is the time frame? Like, yeah, would you like to tell us the time frame when you go to each of these three phases?
I usually like to have at least 3 sessions to kind of talk about and work into an experience like that. And then I usually, before the actual experience, I like to take at least an hour beforehand and just make sure we're tightening any areas that they might have questions about, or again, more expectation management, more. We might go into some tools for navigating that space. It could be breath work, meditation practices, mantras. There's a lot of education that goes into the preparation. And so I like to have at least 3 sessions leading into an experience to make sure that they, have adequate time to ask any questions and come in really prepared and understanding, what exactly could take place, which, as you know, working with a lot of these medicines is kind of there's so much trust that is required.
So you said, so you have preparation, and
Mm-hmm.
then what's the second?
The second is ceremony. Now that word is used flexibly because there is clinical application that you would more so call a session, but I choose to see that phase as ceremony, meaning that's the time that we're getting in and actually having the experience. That's when they are directly working with the medicine, and there's rules and structure that I create around that as well that help make it a safe container, and that I've noticed really some of the rules that I bring in, I've noticed really support the client in not getting too mixed up in the process of the work. So
okay, so tell us more then.
Perfect. So depending on the dose that the client is choosing to work with, ketamine can it's a dissociative anesthetic, but it has psychedelic properties in the right dosages. And so for more the ceremonial or psychedelic experience, usually those dosages are tipped a little higher to where there's more, the experience is a little stronger, maybe more profound than working with psycholytic doses. Psycholytic doses are they're not sub-threshold, but they're doses that are smaller so that the experience isn't as deep or profound. And those can be helpful if a client wants to do some therapy work or do some processing, because there's a little bit of ego dissolution that takes place with the smaller doses. And then, with the guard coming down just a little bit, the therapy work becomes more productive. But for the more psychedelic doses, I like to have a general rule that we keep talking to a minimum, and that they really kind of use the techniques we talk about and surrender and go into the experience with an open mind and an open heart. I make sure that all areas of consent are covered before the experience. So if that includes supportive touch or anything like that, I make sure to get consent beforehand. That way, they're not deep in the medicine and reaching out for help, and we haven't talked about what supportive, safe touch looks like. So we make sure to cover all those bases beforehand. That way, there is very clear consent for how they receive support during the experience.
Okay, wonderful. When you said you approach this phase, you call it ceremony phase, as you approach it in a certain way. You still would approach it in a ceremonial way when you the smaller doses? Yeah.
I like to. I like to
Yeah.
still set up the container as if it is a ceremony. And a lot of that comes down to the respect you have when you're working with really any of these medicines.
Mm.
I believe that in my experience working with ketamine, I believe it carries a certain level of consciousness.
Mm.
And as you're familiar working with some of the medicines that you have, a lot of them do carry a consciousness and
Yeah.
can really be teachers. And
Hmm.
so the reason that I still, even if we're working with ketamine in smaller doses, I will still structure the space in a certain way to bring that respect.
Okay.
So there might be, I might smudge the space, I might do different things like that that bring more of the ceremonial elements. But this is all, of course, based on what the client is comfortable with and their framework for how they see the space.
Hmm. So how did you come to conceive the session as a ceremony? How did you create this Ketimony? I think you told me
Mm-hmm.
one time. Hmm.
Yeah, so that's the word that me and some of my other professional friends use. We call it a ketimony,
Hmm. It's beautiful.
and the ketimony experience for those that are really open in terms of spiritual healing. That's more when I would structure a ketimony or talk about that, and that is um, like working with other indigenous medicines. There's practices that go into that again bring a lot of respect and and spiritual grounding. So I might call in the seven directions, and for those that aren't familiar with that, is basically a prayer of connection, a prayer of grounding, a prayer of protection. And that kind of creates the energetic container that the ceremony takes place. So I might, have a prayer coming into it, and I might invite the client to take part in that as well. And then again, we have some rules. One of my favorite rules again is noble silence, and that's we keep the talking as little as possible. Talking is wonderful, but in those spaces, it can start to get a little messy. People can
Hmm.
get stuck in their process when they're trying to verbally figure things out too much, and I've really found it supportive to allow people to really surrender into the experience and stay with their breath, stay with the process their body is experiencing. So I like to keep talking to a minimum. And then for the ketimonies, I might also bring instruments. I might also sing. It all depends
Oh.
on what I feel the space needs. And so my intuition also plays a big factor in what takes place in the ketimony experience. And again,
Hmm.
all of these pieces are discussed and kind of prepared before we go into that experience.
Hmm.
So
And would you put also like some other kind of background music or just
mhm.
silence? Okay.
Yeah, yep. So I have playlists that I use for the ketamony experiences, and uh, many of them are medicine songs. Some of them are guided meditations. Some of them are frequencies and sound healing. I might do some of that based on again what I feel like the space needs. So the ketamonies are a much more intuitive process than say a session would be when you're working with
Mm.
ketamine.
Yeah. Yeah. So a session up at the smaller doses. So I guess the sacred silence at that point is now part of the picture. So how
Correct.
would that be that? But you still approach it as a ceremony. So how would that be that ceremony?
Yes. So with the psycholytic doses, um, the same elements of preparation would go into it, and I like to structure at least an hour and a half to 2 hours when we're doing the psycholytic experiences. And with that, I prepare clients for a different type of process. So a lot of times in therapy, there's stages where we go through talk therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
that is wonderful. We kind of talk about some different topics and then kind of find the drop in points that we really want to process. When I'm preparing someone to work with a psycholytic dose of ketamine, we come in with a pretty clear focus. It's like, okay, here is this memory, this experience, this process that I want to understand on a deeper level. And then one of the therapeutic models that I use is called internal family systems. And I use that model a lot for those psycholytic doses because it is a model of understanding yourself on a deeper level. And you can physically and somatically release a lot of stuck energy, a lot of stuck emotions that are often what create the looping process for people. I'm wondering how much I ought to go into that.
How much you want?
So yeah, there when we have something difficult or traumatic happen to us,
Mm-hmm.
what we know from a lot of the research that's unfolding is we experience somatic blockages. The energy of that experience gets stuck and trapped, whether it's a thought process that stays stuck or there's energy that
Mm-hmm.
stays stuck in the body. And internal family systems is one very good and effective way of helping people learn what's stuck and release it with principles such as compassion, love, acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use in the psycholytic container, with those smaller doses, I use internal family systems and we focus on a specific process, a
Okay.
specific memory.
Okay. But it's called internal family system because
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah,
this the families within you, or it's actually also related to okay
exactly.
the original family.
Exactly.
No, okay. Yeah, okay.
The comparison a lot of people use is to the movie Inside Out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for those who have seen it, you kind of
Mm-hmm.
got the family members living inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we've observed about our nature as humans is our process of thought and experience isn't singular. Our mind is multiple, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
we might have thoughts that surface that we're like, man, why am I thinking that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we experience self-judgment, and that's because if you choose to look at it that way, you've got a lot of different characters that are
Yes.
inside of you.
Yeah, that's also like I don't know if you're familiar with psychosynthesis.
Hmm.
That's the framework okay that I study for my coaching. And they talk about the same thing, they just call them sub personalities. But still like as in the movie Upside Down, yes, all these characters inside us.
Yep,
It's a commedia dell'arte.
exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
And the wonderful thing about ketamine is it quiets those characters down on some level.
Okay.
It's kind of
Okay.
like, well, again, ketamine being historically used as a horse tranquilizer, it's good at tranquilizing those sub characters that can sometimes be very afraid or responding from trauma, stuck in that fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
state. And
Mm-hmm.
ketamine is kind of like, hey, let's calm things down. And then with that feeling of calm and safety, the processing becomes much more effective.
Okay. Okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, beautiful. So that's one of the tools that you're using in the smaller doses.
Yeah, psycholytic.
Psycholytic. I was gonna say it, but I wasn't sure. Psycholytic doses. Beautiful. Okay. Yeah. So that's. So who decides or how you decide when to have psycholytic ceremony or like a psychedelic ceremony with ketamine?
Yeah, there is some of my judgment that might factor into it based on what I observe the client needs,
Mm-hmm.
but a majority of it, I just lay out the information and I give them options for how they want to choose to approach it. And that might also depend on, again, their drive to do clinical work or their drive to engage more in spiritual healing. Because there is a difference between those. Someone might want to work with ketamine to manage their anxiety or manage their depression or work through that, and that would be more, clinical application. But if they're more choosing in to the experience from a framework of, I want to spiritually heal, I want to spiritually grow, I want to expand my consciousness, that would fit more the ceremony experience. So the intention of the client largely guides the container that is created.
Okay, beautiful. And so as you said that, as you're mentioning that, so with the intention of the client, so what is your experience working with ketamine and outcomes of clients? Like, as you were already a therapist before using ketamine, so I don't know if you see what differences have you seen, and so on. Just tell us your experience. Let's say before ketamine, after ketamine.
Yes.
Introducing your life.
Hope is one of the pieces that it really brings, and not that you, again, place expectations on this thing or this treatment, but it is a wonderful tool because it is another option for hope. And many people who come in and are, deep in their suffering, options are helpful. It's nice to have, hey, you can try this, you can try this. Like, there's still so many things that you can try, and that hope is huge. And not to mention the statistical effectiveness that ketamine is really supporting, and the evidence base that is growing for working through a lot of this, a lot of the illnesses and disorders that, show up in the Western framework of how we see mental health. Ketamine is very effective for treating and managing a lot of those. And there are many ketamine clinics that do more, infusions or more, strict kind of management of depression and anxiety. And my hot take is that that's really underutilizing what the medicine can do. I really see that if you structure a space with very clear intention for what you're trying to accomplish in that space, it really makes the experience more effective. And so I've actually had a number of clients who have come to me with past experience working with ketamine in different containers, and they didn't find it very effective or very useful because of the setting, because of the way the space was structured. And also a lot of the expectations that were going into it. Again, if we see this as something that just manages mental health symptoms, then we're undervaluing what it can really have. Very deep and profound experiences, spiritual, mystical experiences working with ketamine. And if we choose to see it only as something that manages anxiety or depression, again, we're undervaluing what it can accomplish.
Okay, so that's something you mentioned already before. So how important is the preparation in which addressing the right expectation? So check what the expectation are and the intention, and then preparing. So the settings, that's something that we hear often in the medicine space, at least. So how the mental set, the approach something, and then the setting that is created around it. Yeah, so that's what makes the whole difference.
It really is. And again, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to someone expert that can guide you through these phases.
Yep, someone who has the experience and has navigated that space. I really feel it's beneficial for those navigating that space to have done their own work in that space as well. Like I see that as very important. But you're right. Set and setting being the physical and energetic environment of the space that the experience is happening in, and being mindset, coming in with strong intention but open expectation. And
Mm.
I work oftentimes with clients to differentiate between those two ideas, because intention, relates back to our hope for what might happen, our
Mm-hmm.
hope or our prayer for what we might receive from the
Mm-hmm.
experience. But expectation, um, it's helpful to come in with no expectations,
Mm.
or to really kind of manage this. Lots of things could take place, and it's important to be open, to not say,
Yeah.
oh, this experience is going to do this for me, right? Because then
Yeah.
you're trying to put a cage on an
Mm.
experience that won't be caged.
Yeah. Not exactly. And I think that probably there is a confusion for someone who never approached this and see intention as expectation as almost the same thing. And oftentimes people have expectation and not intention, actually. But yes, intention, as you said. And also, I feel intention, on top of what you said, it's also, especially when it's with a good preparation, it's a process by itself to clarify and already be more aware of what you need. So, what you need in your life, what you need to embody more, what qualities, what work needs to be done. So, already work on intention is part of the preparation, and that by itself is already part of your growth process, of your healing process. um and then I would love also to ask about, so we talked already about, but like the no, I forgot the word. So we talk about set and setting, which is like
Mhm.
preparation and ceremony, and then there is the after ceremony, and we talked about that before, the integration part. But it's often, and maybe for people start approaching, they start hearing certain setting, setting, and then they also hear about integration, but almost feels like it's separated, and the whole three are together.
Yep.
You need to have the preparation, you need to have the right setting, so set and setting, you need to have the after. So we should invent something that brings the three together. But so how do you approach integration with clients after your Ketimonies?
You are absolutely right. If you miss one of those pieces, you the whole miss the whole point of what we're going for. Um, Preparation is integration. You know, Preparation shows your level of commitment and dedication to the experience. The fact that you're willing to prepare yourself for that experience, to take it seriously, to reflect on it, that already is integration. Integrating, in my mind, is your dedication to make change.
Mm, I
The
love
depth to
that.
which you're committed to embody the changes. And so that's the process that continues to unfold after the ceremony. Is, again, you can slip back into your old way of doing things, and it becomes more like a dream. Or you wake up every day and wonder, all right, I've been given this opening, how do I want to utilize it? What changes do I want to make? How do I want to disrupt the patterns that I'm in?
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. We're gonna write a quote about this.
Perfect.
Anyway, so how would you like to, I don't know, in some keywords, share all that we have been talking so far, all these beautiful things?
For me, another big principle as I was preparing for the podcast and reflecting on the big lessons that have arrived, again working with a lot of these medicines and with ketamine, is to have respect for it. You know, in if you're not in a relationship of respect when you're working with ketamine, it can be addictive, it can be harmful.
Mm,
There's a lot of harm reduction that also comes into working with many of these medicines. And if you treat it with respect, if you treat it as the tool that it is, and it's a wonderful tool, a wonderful ally, in our tool bag. If you treat it with respect, there's a lot of beauty that comes with that.
Mm.
And respect not only with, how you physically work with it, but how you mentally view that medicine, how you mentally view the experience itself. Because again, you can minimize it and make it a substance or a prescription that you take every day, right? And then it becomes this thing that you're using instead of you being on an equal playing field with the medicine. It's like, this is an important ally, and I also get to be part of this experience, and we're on the same page.
Mm.
Right? It's not the medicine above you. It's not you above the medicine. You're in equal standing with it.
Yeah, you're in perfect collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah, co-create, collaborate.
Yes, exactly.
That's beautiful.
And so for those that are, choosing to work with ketamine and have that opportunity, you might even consider making your own framework or your own way of structuring that space. And even if whoever is holding that container isn't well versed in those different stages of the change process, that's something clients can create for themselves. They can reflect, okay, how might I prepare for this experience? What elements in the ceremony might be important for me? And then what changes am I committed to afterward, to really capture those three phases: preparation, ceremony, integration.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great suggestion tip, as there is at home ketamine session, and they work really well for many people that actually, because as you said, there's also clinics that do that, but many people, not only the clinic may be too far away, and to drive back especially.
Yeah. Yeah, don't drive after using ketamine.
Yeah, exactly. So home at home treatment is a very well option for many people that are eligible to at home treatment, and so that's a great suggestion that they can create their own ceremony space the day of the treatment or the Ketimony then, and see what feels right for them to just welcome this medicine with respect and collaborate into their own personal journey of healing and growth.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful takeaway and wonderful piece of application.
Yeah. And also I really like to say again what you said, what you shared, that it's a commitment, right? You starting with a preparation, it's a commitment to change, right? It's
Yep.
not just something that you take. It's a commitment
Yes.
to change, and it's a beautiful commitment. Or it's a journey that you take.
Yep, absolutely. The ketamine, I've had many clients who go through big emotional releases and letting go of experiences, things that the energy that gets stuck and attached to certain memories, they can let go of it, right? But if they're, again, the mind is very good at doing patterns and habits. And so if you have an experience that impacted you in a certain way, and then you release the energy that's connected to it, there's your opening for change. But you can just as easily pack that energy back in.
Absolutely. Yes. Exactly. That's how it happens. So
some form of disciplined practice, and this is another clear recommendation that I give to clients, is coming up with some kind of daily dedicated practice of connecting to yourself, being present, just some form of consciousness practice that allows the ceremony to stay alive and to continue to unfold. Whether it takes 10 minutes or you know, however long or short, just some kind of practice to where you are integrating the experience, reflecting on it, or even just reflecting on, how do I want to show up today, right? That's my favorite question to encourage clients to ask is, what is your intention every day? If you wake up with that question in mind, what's my intention for today? That already brings such a good level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's a great question to ask, and to wake up and just put the awareness, the focus on how do you want to show up and what's your intention. Mm-hmm. All right. That's so beautiful. Any last words you want to share?
Just thank you. It's super good to reconnect. For those that have the privilege to listen to Melissa, she is incredibly wise and such a good friend, and
Thank you.
holds this professional space so well. So it's a privilege to be here and sharing with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Logan, for being here. I'm so grateful you joined this call and you share your knowledge and you share all this beautiful thing that everybody heard. Thank you so much. And thank you
Thank you.
everyone for listening. And we'll see you soon at Harmoniously podcast. Thank you again, and namaste everyone.
Namaste. See you, Mel.